Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Killer Content Showcase series, a mixture of videos, Q&As, and case studies highlighting some of the most killer content and campaigns in the B2B marketplace. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm the news editor at Demand Gen Report, and with me today we have Cara Hogan, who is the content strategist over at the B2C CRM company Zaius. Cara, it's a pleasure to chat with you today.
Thanks so much for having me.
For those of you who may be out of the loop, Zaius won a Killer Content Award this year in our buyer-focused content category. The Empowered Marketer series was a collection of videos, podcasts, blog posts designed to explore how real marketers are catching the attention of their audiences, the way that they were able to keep their buyers at the center of the attention and the center of the campaign was really inspiring, and I'm happy that we were able to chat about it today. So, Cara, to start things off, please walk us through the ideation process of the campaign. What did the conversations with your internal team sound like when planning this campaign out, and who did you have in mind for the intended users of the content internally, that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So this kind of came about because I had done a podcast before. I did a very similar show for my last company where I interviewed, it was kind of more focused on SaaS analytics. So I interviewed a lot of VCs about the analytics they look for when they're investing in companies. And that went really, really well. So when they hired me at Zaius, they pretty much were like, can you do one for us too? So it wasn't so much a matter of selling this campaign as it was just coming up with a plan to stand out. That was the more challenging part. So I knew that in the intervening years, a lot of brands had launched podcasts. The advantage I had with my last one was that it was early. And so we really quickly got traction. So my thought process was just how can we create something for our target audience, so B2C and e-commerce marketers, and have that something be really useful and really strategic and different than what anyone else was doing. Because there's a lot of e-commerce podcasts out there that can tell you about like how to drop ship something or, how to start a business. But I was really wanting to focus on marketing specifically, how you build a brand, how you scale a paid advertising campaign, and kind of the more nitty-gritty details that not everybody gets into.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because it's interesting when you're targeting marketers with content focused on marketers. So what do you feel was missing in the space? Can you elaborate that a little bit on that a little bit more about what was missing in the market when it comes to content from marketers, and what was the value add that you were trying to get through to your target audience?
I really wanted it to be more tactical and less inspirational. Not to kind of slam inspirational podcasts, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people talking about, their origin story, how they came up with a business idea, how they overcame challenges. And those are really interesting stories, but those have been told. And I really wanted to hear from people who were more in the trenches, who were like me. Like I wanted to hear from other marketers like myself who are doing the job day to day, who don't always get the spotlight, and who have really interesting things to share. So that was more who I was thinking about helping and serving.
Really interesting. So when it comes to the conversations with your team about the content formats that you were going to approach with this series, obviously podcasts were kind of a given that from your past experience, your colleagues saw what they were able to bring to the table. But when it came to the other types of content that you were producing, what did those conversations sound like? What about deciding the types of content formats that would actually resonate with your audience?
Yeah, so my thought was, we launched this about a year ago, so in early 2018. And at the time, LinkedIn videos were doing really, really well. Not that they have slowed down at all. They still do really, really well. But my thought was, not only are we recording the audio for a podcast, but let's use the video as well to kind of promote the podcast. So what I did was I would pull out a little snippet of the conversation in video form. We did a fun little intro with some animation, to kind of tease the entire episode. And that did really, really well. We got a lot of comments, a lot of likes, a lot of engagement, and it drove people to the full interview if they wanted to hear more. Some people didn't. They just watched the video, and that's fine too. I mean, if you just want like a bite-sized little snippet, but it was more about promoting the longer form content. And then we did the same thing with blog. So every episode we put out, we actually have a Medium publication for the Empowered Marketer. And with every episode, we pick our top 4 answers. So you can get the Empowered Marketer, whatever format you really want. You can read the top 4 takeaways. You can watch just the short little 2-minute video, or you can hear the whole episode and get all of the in-depth takeaways from the entire conversation. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure content series.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you were trying to you're making the most of the content, the long form assets that you already had, and producing it in different ways to give your audience options when it comes to how they were obtaining that information, which is really key when the buyer's journey is being decided by them, not necessarily you. So that's really unique there. So when it comes to gauging success with the campaign, how do you track success with a campaign that has a variety of different pieces of content across multiple different touch points? What was important to you and your team when it comes to measuring success for this?
So I think we were very unusual in that, I mean, downloads and top line numbers are great, but that was not the point for us. For me, a podcast specifically is an amazing way to build relationships with people. So we really started out by featuring our customers. So it was a customer marketing exercise where we wanted to make our customers famous. And even though, especially at the beginning, our listenership was not very big, it was a great way for me to just sit down with customers and talk to them and ask them about their challenges and their day-to-day struggles and how they've succeeded and what they've done. And that was invaluable for me. And it really helped kind of solidify their relationship with Zaius and feel like we were really investing in them. And then later on, when the podcast got a little bit bigger, I was able to reach out to not just customers, but also thought leaders in the space, prospects as well. And again, build that relationship with them. So I'm measuring the podcast less in like overall downloads and, number like organic traffic to our site and that sort of thing, and more on, did that conversation help spark a conversation with our sales team? Did that conversation help, stop some churn with our customers? Is it really helping to build that one-on-one relationship that we want?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems so straightforward, but it's not necessarily the case with a lot of B2B organizations, that your current customers are a rich resource when it comes to content and helping fuel content for future campaigns. And it also is it's a double-edged sword when it comes to also helping ensure that you're showing your customers worth, and then ultimately leading to more conversations later on down the line from cross-sell, upsell opportunities, and just overall retention as a whole. That's really interesting there. You brought up the topic of influencers, which is one of the unique points of the campaign as well. I'm curious to hear what types of tips, best practices you would share with colleagues in the space that are looking to partner with industry influencers and industry experts and thought leaders for campaigns such as this one.
I think that for me, I've sounds crazy, but I've always just been into, building those relationships with people slowly over time. So some of the bigger names that we've had on the podcast, I got because somebody made an introduction for me, or because I just reached out on Twitter because I liked something they wrote and just asked them if they wanted to be on the show. And really, once you get a couple bigger names, it makes it easier and easier to reach out and get more of those influencers. Really, you get like one or two, and you can then reference them and say, oh, Shane Pitson, the VP of marketing at Quip, the toothbrush company, was on our show. okay, that validates us, and that shows that, we're not a joke. We're not just interviewing small brands. We're interviewing this really cool up and coming brand that everyone's seeing around, and so therefore helps get that next person on the show.
So once you build those initial relationships with thought leaders and industry influencers in the space, it kind of turns into a big old validation snowball where you're able to, continue building out that network and start to, create those meaningful relationships with not just customers but also influencers as well. That's really interesting. Not every campaign is a perfect seal the deal sort of campaign. I'm curious if you'd be able to share anything that surprised you during the campaign execution process, any hiccups that you had during the campaign or the planning process even that you and your team weren't necessarily prepared for.
Oh yeah, I feel like everybody has has issues and hiccups, whether it's like, a technical problem. I actually had an interview fairly recently where my mic recorded my voice like 3 octaves lower than it actually is, and I still don't know what happened. I was like, what? This has never happened before. I don't really know what caused it, and now I have to go back and re-record all my audio. So there's like fun things like that happen. And then there's also just kind of the evolution of the series over time, where when I started, I was really excited about having it have a separate Medium publication, because I thought that having it have its own identity and be on its own place in somewhere like Medium that's really emphasizes discoverability would help a lot with growing the podcast. And I would say that's been a moderate success, but not as good as I expected. And I'm not sure what the balance, pros and cons were really of not hosting that content on our own site. So, where we were giving up kind of the SEO value for discoverability. And I feel like I'm not sure I would make that trade-off again. And in fact, when we launched our video series, Marketing Unboxed, I did not do that. That is all 100% on our site. And that series has been, I would say, more successful than the Empowered Marketer, and has been directing all of the traffic to our website, which is great.
Yeah, it's interesting that when it comes down to it, being able to fail fast and be able to tweak on the fly and pivot on the fly to just understand and learn from the different channels that you're testing out, different ways to get in front of your audience, whether it be going to their watering holes or trying to get them to come to your own sites. There's pros and cons with all of those types of options. It's a matter of finding what's best for your business. That's really a good takeaway there. When it comes to the campaign, what other lessons have you learned, or do you think others can learn from your campaign that we haven't necessarily touched on yet?
I would say some of the more fun things that I've enjoyed doing for the series is I've done some live interviews at shows. So, for example, last month I was at Shop Talk in Las Vegas, and I did a Empowered Marketer Live from Shop Talk episode, which was really fun. And I feel like you don't have to be stuck in the format that you're in. It doesn't have to be a long form interview with one person. I mix it up. So I go to these shows and I do kind of short 5-minute interviews with a whole bunch of people. And then that's something exciting and different that people can look forward to now every year, now that we've been doing it for like a year and a half. They know that there's a Shop Talk episode. They know that there's going to be an e-tail episode, and that those are the big shows that our audience goes to. And, they come back to hear my takeaways, what I thought were the trends, and also to hear some interviews with people who attended. So it's a fun way to mix up the format so it doesn't get stale, and also get to go to an event and just talk to people.
Yep, and that's what it comes down to, is having those, one-on-one sort of relationships with folks, and a lot of good takeaways there. And I appreciate you sharing everything that you've shared so far. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So, Cara, thank you for your time and sharing your story with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great.
And thank you to everybody joining us today for the video. Be on the lookout for other great stories we have from our Killer Content Award winners this year and beyond. So keep an eye out for that, and everybody have a great rest of the day. Thanks for your time.